with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I can call the names if you'd like and do the roll if Mike's not here.
Okay, please. Thank you, Teresa.
Okay, you'll need to unmute at the time to say that you're here to let us know for sure, or give us a thumbs up or something. Mike Alley is not here yet unless he.
Yes, I am via the phone and I'm in the midst of calling in. So,
okay.
So I am here.
Okay. You want to wait for him or you want me just to continue?
Why don't you just continue? It'll be fine.
Okay. Dennis Bland.
Present.
Annie Bowen.
Present.
John Costas. Trent Ingvers. Judd Fisher.
Present.
Al Hubbard is here. Chris Lamoth. Pepper Mulheron. It looks like Trent is waiting in the lobby if he just got in.
Yep.
Okay, so Trent, yes. Chris Murphy.
Here.
Dan Peterson.
Here.
Bev Pitts, I saw.
Yep, here.
John Pop.
Here.
Okay, let me go back and see, check again. John Costas. Chris Lamoth. Okay, Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. As everyone knows, our original plan was to be on Ball State's campus in Muncie today, and unfortunately, for obvious reasons, we are unable to do that, which we're very disappointed. I am delighted that Jeff Mearns has joined us, and I'd like to give him an opportunity to say a few words. Jeff?
Well, thank you, Mr. Hubbard, and express my appreciation to all of the members of the commission and also to you, Commissioner, and your staff. We were talking earlier about these are unusual and unusually difficult times, but even in these difficult times, I feel quite fortunate to have the opportunity to serve as the president of Ball State. And it's a pleasure, I guess, to welcome you virtually to this meeting of the Indiana Commission. We, of course, we're looking forward to welcoming you all to our beautiful campus. And this time of year, it is particularly beautiful. And it is beautiful in part because of the investments that you as the commission and our partners in the General Assembly and the governor, the investments that you have made in our facilities and our programs. And so, as I say, we would have wanted to welcome you to our campus, but these are unprecedented times. So certainly we understand that you've taken the necessary precaution to have the meeting online. You all are quite well aware that the pandemic has presented some challenges, and it's exacerbated some of the challenges that higher education has been facing in our state and in our country for several years. But despite that disruption, and it has had a disruptive impact on our operations, we have charted a path, and grateful to our faculty and staff and our deans. We've found a way to continue to serve the state and, more importantly, our students by fulfilling the mission that is articulated in our strategic plan, which is to prepare our students for fulfilling careers and to lead meaningful lives. We see ourselves as partners with you and the commission, the staff and the members of the commission. We see ourselves as partners working together to advance the state's education and workforce development goals. Your goals in your new plan, they align with the goals and imperatives of our strategic plan, which our board approved about 18 months ago. And notwithstanding the challenges and obstacles that we're presently facing, we're committed to implement those strategic imperatives and continue on a flight path to a brighter future. So I hope that you have a productive meeting. Again, on behalf of all of the university community, I want to thank you for your support and your guidance. And of course, I very much look forward to the time, hopefully in the not too distant future, the time when we can welcome you back physically to our campus. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard.
Thank you, Jeff, and congratulations on your reopening plans. And we wish you the best of luck in everything going as well as we could possibly hope for. So as everyone knows, and we do look forward to getting on your campus. That will be very enjoyable for all of us. As y'all know, in August, we elect a new slate of officers. And so as my final act as chair, I would like to propose the officer slate. It was created by a nominating committee consisting of one member per class. And the slate includes the following: Beverly Pitts as chair, Mike Alley as vice chair, and Judd Fisher as secretary. Do I have a motion to support this slate to lead the commission?
Chris Murphy, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Golly, we still, sorry. All opposed, say aye. Well, the slate has been unanimously confirmed and accepted, and congratulations to Bev, Mike, and Judd. So let me turn things over to Chair Beverly Pitts.
Thank you, Al. First thing we want to do is to say a big thank you to you. It was kind of a strange year, and I'm sure that the staff can tell us a lot more about that, but has been, I'm sure, not easy. And we, of course, appreciate your long-term leadership on the commission, and especially this last year. So I know you have to sign off in a bit, but we wanted to be sure that all of us can send you a kind of virtual clap to say thank you.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. And I want to say that what's most enjoyable about the commission is my fellow commissioners and the incredible staff that Teresa has assembled and continues to assemble as her great people are taken by other people, and it's just it's been a great fun to work with all of you, and I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. And I know we've just received, I forget what it's called, but the report that shows progress that we've made over the years in different areas, and we are making progress, which is terrific. And I know that's what we are all in this to do. So to serve the people of Indiana, and particularly the students of our higher ed institution. So it's been a pleasure to serve, and I look forward to continue to serve under your leadership, Bev. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. Thank you very much.
Have another commitment, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon. Thank you very much.
We hope so too. It's my pleasure to serve as the chair, and I hope to help get us through this rather strange year. And all of us are learning to use, I think, social media well, and we will do our best to make sure these meetings are just as good as the ones we have with each other, except that we're not with each other, and that part we miss, I know. I do want to report that both Dan and Dennis, thank heaven, have been reappointed by the governor for another 4-year term. So congratulations, guys. We're very happy about that. And I'm very pleased to welcome our 2 new members, Pepper Mulheron. I see that Pepper is on, which is great. And she's from the 8th Congressional District and is replacing Alfonso. And then Ann Bowen is our new student member from Indiana State. And we are very, very happy. We understand that you've been through some orientation, so you know all about us, but we'd like to know a little bit about you. So Pepper, we'll begin with you. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I know you already saw my biography, so I'll try to touch upon things that aren't in that. Other than being a lifelong Hoosier, I'm a lifelong Southern Indiana Hoosier, always in the 8th District. I work for AT&T and cover 27 counties in the southernmost part of the state. So I'm out and about a lot. And one of my responsibilities at AT&T is to care for our state foundation budget. And the signature AT&T philanthropic initiative is helping reduce the high school dropout rate for students at risk of dropping out of high school. So it aligns so beautifully with so much of what the commission does. And I think a former career that I had working in technical education recruiting for ITT Technical a long time ago might also help. So you never know where along the way those past career steps might align and prepare you for something even better in the future. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you and getting to know you, and happy to be here.
And we're very happy to have you too. And I want to hear a little bit about Anne. Anne, introduce yourself to us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anne Bowen. I'm going to be a junior this year at Indiana State University. I'm studying insurance and risk management and have a second major in financial services. I've had 2 great internships here in Indiana, and I'm just really hoping to continue to make a difference. Had some great involvement and experiences with different scholarships at Indiana State, but just overall really looking to make a good impression and, you know, bring what I can to the table as a student and bring that perspective that you guys are looking for. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, Anne and Pepper. We're very happy to have you with us and look forward to working with you through many years. So thank you for being with us. A little bit of business. I need to announce the recent committee appointments. Chris, actually it's just reappointments for everybody. Chris Lamoth will continue to serve as the chair of the Budget and Productivity Committee. Mike Alley will continue to serve as chair of the Student Success and Completion Committee. And I will continue to serve as the chair of the Academic Affairs Committee. And both Pepper and Ann will be appointed to the Student Success Committee. So some good committee structures now, and fortunately in a little bit different year, it's kind of good to have things sort of the same so we don't have to learn anything more new, I guess. But thank you everybody for your committee work. It's very important, as we all know. It keeps the machine going, and I know that our staff help in doing that is greatly appreciated. Speaking of appreciation, we certainly do appreciate our commissioner, and it is time for her report. I'm anxious to hear all the things she has to tell us. Teresa?
Thank you, and good afternoon. Good to see you. Wish we were with you. We certainly miss not having the opportunity to work with you face to face, but we're adjusting. As someone said to me this morning on a call, life comes at you in unexpected ways, and certainly this has been true of this year. So I want to begin just by thanking Bev for your commitment to our work already and your willingness to step up and serve as our chair. I can't think of anyone who's better prepared to serve at this time with your deep understanding of higher education and already your experience on the commission. So thank you. Look forward to working with you, as I know all the rest of the staff and other members of the commission do as well. I'm delighted by our 2 new members. I've had a chance to spend some time with them and talk to them about the work of the commission. I think you're going to be just so pleased with the caliber of service that we already have come and will expect from them. They come well prepared for this role, and I'm sure they'll be contributors from day one. I also, of course, I know Al's off the phone, but I will separately extend my thanks to him as well. He certainly served at a time of, great change and challenge, and that's going to continue with our new chair's tenure as well. But in particular, I wanted to call out his commitment to especially 21st Century Scholars Program and those who benefited through the Workforce Ready grant. Really, as I've reminded people, in many ways, he was the genesis for the Workforce Ready grant, really saying, we need to do a better job making sure that there are multiple pathways for people that are aligned to the needs of the economy. And he certainly did that well and articulated that position. So I also want to thank Dennis and Dan for continuing their service. I think one of the best parts of the commission, and we'll be talking about this next year a lot as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Commission for Higher Ed in 2021. But during that time, Joan's going to do a little work on the history of the commission, and we'll be talking about this throughout the year. But I believe I'm right that there have been 5 commissioners in 50 years, and we have members certainly on the commission, Dan and Chris and Dennis and others who have had long tenures as commission members, and that's allowed us to really have continuity and really implement our strategic plan, I think, with fidelity to what we have really been focused on throughout. And so I appreciate their willingness to continue to serve as well. I do want to mention, and I think it was mentioned earlier, that one of our challenges, of course, is that we recruit really great people to serve on this staff. And we become the farm team, I think, for a lot of others who see the quality of the people we have and the experience they gain here. And then, of course, have opportunities for them in other places. I, say, that's a great thing because, most of those folks go on and continue in a career in higher ed. We have former staff members who are located on campuses throughout the state, and they understand the work that we do, and that makes it better for us when they leave. It also makes it hard for us when they leave because they've been so good. We've lost several chief financial officers, as you know, in the past, and today I have to announce that Colby Shank, who's been with us for many years, has taken the position of Assistant Vice President for Student Financial Aid at Ivy Tech, and he will be starting that job in early September. We also, in the end of this month, will be losing Michael Howerlock, who is our Chief Technology Officer. These are both key roles and make us a bit vulnerable. I'll be completely honest with you because I just wrote a note that I'm going to share with the Strategic Hiring Committee for the state about adjustments that we're going to need to make. And whenever possible, we try to promote from within to give people more opportunities here at the commission. So I'd like to do some of that. Probably won't post for the other associate commissioner role for a while. We'll divide that between Josh Garrison and Alexa. Deaton will be picking up some of those responsibilities as we really sort of try to make sure that we bring the right person in for that role. My thanks to both of them. They've just been extraordinary. Colby has really sort of professionally grown up at the Commission for Higher Ed, and it's because he's been done such a great job in everything that he's done. So I'll be sharing that information with the staff today. Obviously, it's not been a well-kept secret, so there'll be no surprises when the official announcement goes up. But I wanted to make sure that you know as well and about these personnel changes that are front and center for us. Today, we're going to really continue our focus on what some of these changes have been in recent months and the new realities that we're dealing with. We've talked about some of these things at our June meeting, but I think it's appropriate to continue to give you updates on, sort of a glimpse of reopening, a glimpse of enrollment, some of the challenges that we know that our colleges and universities will face, as President Mearns actually spoke to some of those in his introduction as well. I also have tried to provide some information about the work of the Governor's Workforce Cabinet. As you know, I'm serving as the chair of that as well, and much of the work that we do at GWC aligns with the work of the Commission for Higher Education, as we are in a unique position, I think, really looking at these transitions from high school to education and training beyond high school. So I wanted to provide just a high-level overview of the work that's underway. First, I wanted to say just how encouraged I am by the collaborative spirit that exists between the Governor's Workforce Cabinet, the Department of Workforce Development, the Commission for Higher Education. In my tenure, I think this is the most collaborative set of leaders in those particular positions and aligned priorities that I've seen. And that makes this really challenging work, a bit easier. So since we met the last time, and we've been sending some of this information out to you, so for some of you, it won't be a surprise, but I'll just remind you that we did receive through the Governor's Workforce Cabinet $50 million of the federal CARES dollars. Al is really well aware of this because he serves on this economic recovery group that the governor appointed with the main responsibility to figure out, not just for education and training, but all the federal dollars that come to the state. How will we be using those dollars? And so their responsibility was to look at that. And so I had the chance to present to that group about what we're doing in the area of education and training. And the result of that was $50 million to come to the Governor's Workforce Cabinet to basically scale what we are already doing. The good news is, unlike a lot of other states, Indiana was uniquely positioned to take advantage of what we were already doing. So whether it was the Workforce Ready Grant, the Employer Training Grant, and this has been important because while those programs will continue to exist, as far as we can see into the future, the extra money that we've received to scale them at this point has to be spent by the end of this calendar year. And so we're trying to send this message to Hoosiers with a sense of urgency that take advantage of these now, but we don't want to make them think that the programs are going away. But there are some unique things about the program that will only be in place between now and the end of the year. So we've added 50 new certificates to those 150 high value certificates that we were already paying for. Some of those are in areas that have high need but didn't meet some of the requirements before. So for example, during this period of time, we will pay for CNAs. There's a huge healthcare need for that, and many CNAs will stack that kind of training as they continue with their careers. We'll pay for CDL truck training during this period of time. Phlebotomy. So those are some areas that we have not paid for before, and then many others that actually do align with our high value, high need certificates. So we'll have 50 new certificates during this time. We've also, so we have $22 million of the $50 million that will pay for the Workforce Ready Grant certificates. We have added $15 million to the employer training grant, which pays employers to train current incumbent workers or new workers. And that will, actually, that money will go out the door pretty quickly, I can guarantee you. So those are some changes. The only other change that there are a lot of other things, but it's in the weeds. But I do want to mention that during this period of time, individuals who have a degree, an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, can apply to the Workforce Ready Grant. By state statute, you are not allowed to have a degree and get one of these workforce grants. But what we've discovered is many people have lost their jobs, even if they had a degree. So we can use the CARES dollars for those folks. We cannot use the state budget dollars for those folks. So if I haven't confused you enough, call me and we can talk about it in greater depth. But in addition, we received, the Governor's Workforce Cabinet received $2.2 million for a grant from Strata to actually sort of help to build the infrastructure for these programs. So things like paying for the Council on Adult and Experiential Education to come in and work especially with Ivy Tech to provide advanced standing for people based on their experiences in work. That's another area. So lots happening there, and it's just like everything is changing. It's changing on a weekly basis. We're keeping track of all of our metrics, the number of people who are coming back, and it's, you know, it's, I think we're better positioned than almost any other state to deal with how we effectively use these dollars. In late July, I had the opportunity to highlight the Commission's equity focus for Indiana Black Expo opening day events. As you know, this is always a big deal. You know, it's well attended, and they shifted to basically doing the education part of their of IBE's outreach. I think there were like 4,500 people on the virtual event that we did that day, which is, you know, much smaller than their attendance would be naturally, but it was a big attendance for this particular part. In particular, I focused on our strategic plan that you've approved with the focus on equity as one of the main areas, you know, which we had approved at the end of last year. I did a little sneak preview of this year's equity report, which will be coming out shortly. Did an update on the success of the 21st Century Scholars Program, and talked a little bit about our efforts to recruit and retain more teachers of color and the ways that we use financial aid and performance funding both to close equity gaps. So we had a lot to talk about, and we've had some follow-up conversations with some people who followed up with us after that event. So thank you for your insights to actually deal with this equity issue so that we were positioned, much like we were positioned to talk about, you know, the Workforce Ready Grant. We already had things in place. We have a strategic plan that's already called out things that we need to be doing better. It was mentioned earlier that our college readiness report shows that actually we're going to talk about a college completion report later, but our college readiness report, which we put out earlier, really shows the positive impact of dual credit and the early college model. I had the opportunity to congratulate 5 new early college high schools in late July as well at CELS event, another virtual event. This brings the number of early college high schools to 35 in the state of Indiana. Whenever you get a group of dual credit or early college people together, the issue of the Higher Learning Commission's mandate for meeting the requirements for dual credit teachers always comes up. As you will recall, we have this sound in our heads that by 2022, we have to have all of our dual credit teachers meeting those requirements. I appealed to the Higher Learning Commission because of COVID-19 to give us an additional year. They responded that they would give us, not just us, but other states as well. So we now have until 2023, but we're not going to rest with that. We are moving right ahead to actually make sure we're going to meet those requirements. To help us meet those requirements, the State Budget Committee recently approved a $3 million grant from Invested to prepare liberal arts dual credit teachers in Indiana, and we'll be working with CEL to do that. This is a companion to the STEM teacher program that actually prepares STEM dual credit teachers, but we didn't have funding for liberal arts dual credit teachers. So we will be using this additional $3 million to do that. There's so much going on. I'm almost I probably exhausted you just trying to give you a high level view of that. And a lot of our discussions at the meeting today will really focus around how we're really, navigating this period of time and partnering with our colleges and universities to do that. And we'll be providing on an ongoing basis to you as much information as we can and stand ready to have private conversations with you anytime you want. So with that, Madam Chairman, my report is complete.
Hey, Teresa, can I ask a question? You mentioned 35 high schools are in this early, this is John Pop, by the way.
Yes.
Early college. I thought all the high schools had dual credit, or most of them.
They do. This is a different model. The early college model is you have to be an endorsed high school and you have to go through a whole series of work to be endorsed as a early college high school. And some of those, they graduate, some with an associate degree. So look at it this way, John, it's dual credit on steroids.
Okay.
And but you're right, there is a requirement in state statute that all schools provide at least 2 dual credit courses and 2 AP courses.
I see.
But and of the 35 that we have, 5 of those are technical early college models. So we're, developing several different models. So it's a more serious take on dual credit than a traditional high school might have.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, Teresa. It's very encouraging to see that the CARES money is going to support things that are already ongoing and expand, and the other grant money as well, expand the opportunities when it's so badly needed. So that's very good news. Thank you so much. I'm going to now ask the chairs to give their reports, and we'll start with Chris Lamoth. Are you?
I'm not sure if he's on, so I'll just speak for us.
Okay, Alexa, it's all yours.
Okay. In our July 30th Budget and Productivity Committee meeting, we reviewed our fiscal year 21 spending plan. As I briefly mentioned in our June commission meeting, COVID-19 had a tremendous impact on the preparation of our spending plan this year. So that's why we are discussing it today in August rather than in June, which is typical. So we'll go into more detail about that in just a little bit, and then that will be voted on this afternoon.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mike, I see that you're here. We know you're here.
I am here. Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Bev. Good to be here. Our next meeting is August 20th, though we've had a lot of things that the staff has been underway and interacting with each of the institutions. So I'm going to ask them, starting with Charlie and Liz, to kind of begin giving some updates on several things that have been taking place. So Charlie, you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm going to talk just for just a real quick second about a little more about the rapid recovery effort that's been taking up a lot of our communications efforts right now and our outreach team as well have been very involved in this work to make sure that the messages of rapid recovery, that help is out there, that you can have education and training, all of these important critical messages are getting to the people that need to hear them. So we sort of are doing it from two different angles. We have communications and marketing efforts that are going, and the incredible Doug Littner, of course, created this graphic that's on the screen right now. The basis of it is, as you sort of work your way up the steps there, we want people to be able to take their next step to the ultimate goal of a new job, a better job, or a more secure future. So that's undergirding all of the messaging that we're working on with Workforce Ready Grant and Employer Training Grant. The other important part is the outreach network. Jared Wilson and Brandy Collins on our team, along with many of the other members of our communications and outreach staff, have been part of this really, I'm going to use the word that I know the commissioner doesn't like, but robust, because that's the only word I can think of right now. A very robust outreach network that is working hand in hand with the Career Connections Talent, Secretary Blair Milo, her staff, and the others. They've reached out to over 100 community organizations, faith leaders throughout the state. It's an important part of making sure that we are meeting Hoosiers where they are, and getting to them the information that they have the ability to do this and they should do it, and these are the resources that are in their backyard. Another important part of that is our online hub. If you haven't had a chance to go look at it yet, I encourage you to. Thankfully, our team at Vox was able to stand up a rather 1.0 quick version of what we're calling yournextstepin.org. We hope it to be a one-stop shop sort of model for Hoosiers to go on and explore the resources that the state has made available to them. Also, they are able to get connected with live experts and have the chance to have some help in navigating what is and can be confusing, especially at a really critical time in the world. So we are also working on a 2.0 version of that, planned to launch in the fall. I'm sure I will be back to talk to you more about that in the future. But those are just a few of the things that we've been working on with Rapid Recovery and the Governor's Workforce Cabinet. So I'm going to throw it to Liz now to give any more updates.
Thank you, Charlie. And I'm just going to help facilitate this along a little bit. I'll actually ask Colby if he wants to share the work he's been doing with Ivy Tech and VU to get them up to speed on all these changes.
Yes, thank you, Liz. So commission staff have been hard at work preparing our partners at Ivy Tech and Vincennes University for implementation of Rapid Recovery, in particular the expansion of the Workforce Ready Grant. We held a webinar on Rapid Recovery with Ivy Tech and Vincennes University's enrollment and financial aid staff on July 30th. It was well attended, had many good questions, and we also provided some more detailed implementation guidance to the financial aid staff at both of those campuses.
Thank you, Colby. And I know that training within the regions and our outreach efforts is ongoing. So we're not stopping at just the initial launch of this. We're going to continue to offer those trainings as needed. I believe that Josh has some information to share with us about looking toward the future and just general updates on CARES Act and other federal funding. Josh?
Yeah, Liz, if you want to go ahead and move the slide forward, or am I able to control it? All right, we can go to the next one. So just a quick update. Wanted to provide you all an update on the CARES Act and what we've seen across the state. We had hoped we would be able to be discussing the next round of stimulus, but unfortunately, it looks like it's a race between that and the vaccine to see which one we're going to get first. So when it comes to what we've seen with the CARES Act, as you may remember, it was signed into law in late March, and it provided over $30 billion to K-12 and higher education to help with the impact of the pandemic. The next round of stimulus, no matter which version comes out, it looks like there's going to be significantly more education funding than what was in the CARES Act. And Liz, if you can move forward. So just to give you a little breakdown and remind you of the different funds, there's the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund that is administered by the Governor's Office. the Elementary and Secondary School Relief Fund, which is administered by the Department of Education here in Indiana, and then the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, which awarded funds directly to the institutions. And the amount next to them is the amount that Indiana received from each of those funds. So just under $62 million to the Governor's Fund, right around $214 million for elementary and secondary education, and about $235 million for the higher education funds.
Josh, maybe you're already mentioning that, but are you going to mention that half of that goes directly to students?
Yeah, just as a reminder for the higher education fund, half of that went to as emergency support directly to students, not to pay bills that the students owed the institution, but direct support for things like traveling back home or other issues that they may have faced due to shutdowns in the pandemic. Just to give you a quick overview of the amounts that are being tossed around for the Education Stabilization Fund, those three different funds, education funds within originally the CARES Act. The CARES Act, as you can see, offered around $14 billion nationally for higher education. The HEALS Act, which is the Senate Republican proposal, would more than double the amount available to higher education institutions, as well as K-12 and the Governor's Fund. So when you look at whether it's the House's HEROES Act, the Senate Democrats' proposal, or the Republicans' HEALS Act, it's significantly more funding for education across the board. It is also important to note that there are provisions around student loans and around the FAFSA actually in the HEALS Act. The student loans issue, as you may remember, they were suspended through the end of September. An executive order signed by President Trump extends that through the end of December. Guidance has not yet been released by the Department of US DOE about how that will be administered, but the HEALS Act also contains streamlining for the purposes of income-based repayment and makes it a more uniform process, as well as it adds a checkbox on the FAFSA for individuals who have lost employment for parents. So that's reported directly to the institutions so they can better process professional judgments and change information on the FAFSA for the students. So hopefully that makes it through.
Hey, Josh, this is John. How in the world can they give all these million students money direct? Is it a flat amount, or is it somehow graduated or based on how far they live away from the school, or do you have any idea?
Yeah, each institution implemented their own way of doing it. So some used need-based, some used an application process. It really, by each institution, they pick their own pathway on that one. And we have a copy, and I can send you of the institution's posted 30-day reports explaining some of that, so we can share that if you would like.
Okay, no, I just was curious. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, do we know the utilization there? How much of that has been utilized? I mean, was that actively called upon, and have they distributed most of that?
I don't know the distribution amounts. I know that most the institutions, and I can find out and send it in a follow-up, they did spend the student portion, and I know that they have been spending the institutional portion. Recently, there was a report, and I'm not going to quote it because I don't remember the exact percentages, but it showed that between the higher education fund and the elementary secondary education fund, a significantly larger amount of the higher education fund had been spent across the country as of end of July. Was there another question?
That was
all right.
Sorry, that's the same question. Thank you.
All right. And then just a quick update on this. For the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, again, this was almost a $3 billion fund nationally. It was based on the populations of individuals ages 5 to 24, and then the count date information. And, we received it should be $7 million to provide emergency grant funding. Liz, if you can go ahead and move forward. And in late June, the governor put out a request for grant proposals to address 3 items with the governor's fund. The governor's office had worked directly with the commission, State Board of Education, and the Department of Education to develop this request. And it addresses 3 items: the device availability for K-12, so those tablets that are needed to do remote education, addressing connectivity issues for areas that do not have reliable or strong broadband. And then also, as we know that with this quick shift to remote education, the ability to provide professional development for educators so that they can provide the best and high quality remote education. The first two components, the lead applicants were K-12 systems, and the third item, educator capacity, was led by higher education applicants. We hope in the next week or so we will see the recipients announced for these grants, at least coming up here soon. And any questions? I know I went through that quickly. I just want to make sure we covered, or we have enough time for other items.
And I think that concludes my report, Beverly.
Bev, you're on mute.
Bev, you're muted.
I've been watching the button and I did it anyway. I just said you can take some credit for some very good stuff because that was terrific and it really helped us data. I just wanted to thank Josh and Charlie and Liz for all that information, and I'm glad we've got copies of it. And Josh, anything else that you can send related would certainly be appreciated, but that was very, very helpful. Kind of hard for academic affairs to follow up on that. So of course I turn to Ken always. So Ken's going to give our report. We had a really great meeting though, and some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. There are 5 degree programs that the committee reviewed and that are in your agenda item or agenda book for expedited action. Those appear on page 15. There's 1 bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, 1 educational specialist degree, and 1 PhD. Be happy to answer questions should you have any. There are 2 very interesting discussion items. The Commission always likes to hear about institutional collaboration. So we did have a report from Indiana University and Purdue University on a dual program in the general area of agriculture and law. More specifically, this was a collaboration involving 2 degree programs, an MS in agricultural economics to be offered by Purdue University West Lafayette, and a master's of jurisprudence to be offered through IUPUI. Now, both of these programs are well established, they're existing. But in this particular collaboration, the 2 universities wanted to make it easier for students who had an interest in both agriculture and law to complete 2 master's degrees in less time and credits that it would typically take should those 2 programs be taken individually outside of this collaborative program. So in summary, if one were to take these 2 programs individually, it would have required a total of 66 credit hours. By virtue of this dual program approach, a student can complete both of those master's degrees with 51 credit hours. So it's a very nice collaboration between the 2 institutions that benefit students and provides individuals with some real expertise in an important area of the state's economy. The second discussion item at the committee meeting related to career relevance. And you may recall that one of the 55 action items in the Commission's latest iteration of its strategic plan, Reaching Higher in a State of Change, had to do with career relevance. And more specifically, it called for 100% of the post-secondary programs to have an internship, work-based learning, research project, or other student engagement experience that has career relevance. And a working group, a steering group, has been put together involving all of the public institutions to define exactly what is meant by a student experience that has career relevance, and then to put together a survey, send that out to all of the institutions, and we hope to be able to report the results of that survey by the December commission meeting. There were some very interesting resources that were identified to help implement this action step. And in particular, there are two organizations that have done work in this area. One is called the National Society of Experiential Education, the other, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So I should say, while this particular steering group has perspectives that draw from academics, government relations, they're probably the predominant expertise represented on that group is one of career development. The people who are at the colleges and universities who work with students and help them to develop their career plans and to help them choose courses and have experiences that can help to make that transition between the academy, college, and the workplace. So in any case, that was, we had a very interesting discussion. We will have another report that will be made to the Academic Affairs and Quality Committee at its meeting on the 24th of this month. And then at that point, I think we'll be well positioned to begin to survey the institutions and again, report back to you in December. Madam Chair, that's complete my report.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, our report that you did for us. Thanks so much. And I just wanted to emphasize that it was great that our colleagues from the institutions are also involved in this conversation, so that we have clear understanding of what they're thinking, how each of their institutions differs. And it's really complicated, but Ken and the staff are doing a terrific job in getting us there. I think that does it for our committee reports. We have a piece of business here. We need to consider our minutes of the June 11th, 2020 commission meeting. The minutes are in the agenda book, and I will ask for a motion to approve.
Madam Chairman, I'd recommend approval and make that motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Or wave.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are passed. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I ask that when someone makes a motion, just for purposes of our own minutes, if you could say your name, who's making the motion, and it'll make it easier, I think, for us to keep that. So just in this case, I know it was Mike Alley who made the motion and Judd, I believe, who made the second. But for any other ones going forward, if you would identify yourself when you make the motion, please.
Yes, that was it. I should have said something about Liz's note too. Let's try to remember to do that to help the staff out. And just another reminder that all the materials that we're looking at, we got the email from Liz yesterday where those materials are available to you. And now it's time to listen to some very, very good reports. The first one I'm very anxious to hear about, the Scholar Track graduation plan. And Josh is going to walk us through all that. So Josh, we turn it over to you.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and get the proposal up here. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, as you can tell, I am not Courtney Hott. Courtney is 39 and a half weeks pregnant and was unable to join us today. So I am going to do be in her place. I just want to say that I'm disappointed that she can't be here because she's done such a wonderful job in crafting this plan and developing this idea of embedding the statutorily required graduation plan for all high school or all middle school and high school students within our Scholar Track system. So just want to talk about the proposal and what we're thinking about here in the coming months and actually year ahead as we develop this. So first of all, what is the graduation plan? The graduation plan is set out in Indiana code that in 6th grade, all students have to fill out a plan that will follow them from 6th grade until high school graduation. And it has certain statutory requirements that it must include. Those items range from an intention to graduate to what courses they're going to take to post-secondary goals. So whether or not they want to go straight into the workforce or whether or not they want to go to some sort of post-secondary education for the military. It has a number of items that the student fills out at 6th grade. And it is supposed to be updated throughout their academic career through middle school and throughout high school. Although it's supposed to be updated throughout their years, it is not often kept up to date. And that's due to some of the problems that we have with the current structure and requirements within the graduation plan. First of all, it is not a user-friendly process for students or families who want to fill the graduation plan out. Further, it doesn't directly align right now with the new graduation pathways. You can use it for that, but it's not a clear one-to-one on that. The plan right now, if you're sitting down with a 6th grader to fill it out, is about 10 pages long. And if you've sat down with a 6th grader to fill this out, when I was an outreach coordinator on the west side of the state, we would work on these with counselors. It can be a frustrating process for them, and keeping the interest of a 11 or 12-year-old for an hour plus talking about what they're going to do in 7 years is not always the easiest thing to do. Additionally, any plan that's created doesn't transfer very well. Schools can complete it in different ways, so some may have it embedded in their information systems. Most of them do it via paper, and then it follows the student in their file. And when students move from school to school, those graduation plans are often either lost or they just stop doing them at that point in time. And at any point, if a parent wants to see what has been outlined, it's not something that's easy. It's time intensive for you to contact your school and say that you want to see the graduation plan if that's something that you would like to do. And just to give you an idea of what they're filling out, we thought it might be helpful to include what does the current graduation plan look like. And as you can see, it has, these are just some of the 10 pages. It has a lot of information that students and families have to fill out. And oftentimes it's the counselor that's spending their time to fill these out with students. As you can see, this really isn't something that you can do with a class of 36th graders and do very easily, talking with them about whether they're going to take the ACT or the SAT or the ASVAB or work keys. I mean, just explaining those would take a significant amount of time at any level. So just to kind of give you an idea, this is what they're doing right now in terms of the graduation plan. And Courtney over the summer has worked on an idea of how we can make the plan more useful for counselors in the high schools, for the students themselves, for parents, and for the state. So how can we make this a better process for everyone who has to interact with the graduation plan and make it not a box that we just check, but it's something that's useful for all. So the first item that we would want to do is to convert the graduation plan from that 10-page PDF into a shorter, fewer question, digital-friendly program, or I guess you call it an application, within the Commission's Scholar Track system. As you remember, the Scholar Track system already has accounts for students, for all of our 21st century scholars, for our financial aid recipients, for our high school and middle school counselors, for our college partners. They all have access, as well as community partners. And one of the big things that we also have is that parents can create an account to track their students or to work with their students on their financial aid or their 21st century scholarship eligibility. By embedding this form into a simple, logic-driven, question-based system, we can offer students more in-depth information about career paths and other tools. So as if you're going through and let's say you have a student who indicates in their graduation plan that they're interested in becoming a teacher, an educator, we can then provide them information about education career pathways. Let's say they're interested in advanced manufacturing or something along those lines, or indicate that they're not really wanting to go to a 4 or 2 year path. we can use the information gathered throughout the Scholar Track to help them, help advise them, as well as this information will be useful for counselors. So if you think about the new graduation requirements through graduation pathways, one of them has a work or employability component to it. This would allow a counselor to pull all of their students who've completed the graduation plan and look and see what are students interested in. And this would allow them to pair them with opportunities that they're working in throughout the community. Let's say they're going to do an event, if you're in West Lafayette, if you go to Subaru, they could see who would be interested in participating in that type of activity, rather than, missing students they may not know might be interested, or having to talk with every single student in a grade level. Additionally, we would align it directly with the graduation pathways, the testing changes with going to a statewide test, and align it with the employability skill standards here in Indiana. Again, by doing this, students at the end would be able to print a PDF that would say, if you've ever seen the graduation pathways, it's 3 different boxes. It could outline exactly how they've met or how they plan on meeting those pathway requirements. You print it off and put it on your refrigerator, and have that at home to see which pathway, and you can update that at any given time. Again, whenever a student transfers from school to school, it's often lost. The graduation plan is not something that follows easily with the student's records. So by embedding it in Scholar Track, and as soon as that student's school changes, we would be able to give the new school access to their graduation plan. And as a school, intakes a new student who may be transferring mid-semester, they would have information right at their fingertips already about the interests of the student and what they want to do. Again, it allows parents to be involved in the process and provide for ongoing access to the plan, and be able to have them be a more active role in this process. And it'll take some of the mystery away. I know graduation pathways can be confusing for some, but if you have a chart that's easily readable, clearly outlines what your student's going to do, it takes some of the complication away. Again, it makes it a more modern format. I am a pen and paper kind of guy, but when it comes to most of our students, that's not the case. The online process is something that they're more comfortable with, and they can do better than maybe the more traditional paper route. And again, as mentioned, it's going to allow for us, the Department of Education, and for our local education partners to provide more direct information about the various post-secondary pathways. We've seen our college going rate dip a little over the past few years. This would be a way to talk with that 37% that's not going on to post-secondary education and say, here are options for you to get some sort of formal post-secondary education after high school that aligns with your goals. So just following, and this is one of the layouts for the graduation plan. There are multiple different layouts that could be used. We just pulled this one from what's already out there. We'd be able to follow the format of what either DOE or State Board of Education is issued. So students are seeing the same thing from State Board, from Department of Education, and from this graduation plan. So it keeps that consistency. It's not a different looking layout each time they interact with their graduation plan. Provides that easier tracking and allows for the alignment. And if you haven't seen the graduation pathways requirements, this is a layout of part of them. So just to give you an idea, and we have not launched the build of this yet. This will be something that we would be working on later into the year, or later towards the end of this year, but we wanted to seek your all feedback. But basically, we would want to have the student contact information so we can go ahead and reach out to them and assist them. Legislatively, they're required to complete a graduation promise, so that would be something that would be part of the graduation plan, unless that was for some reason removed legislatively. I don't know why it would be. They have to select a diploma type. We would leave Core 40 academic honors, technical honors, and international baccalaureate on there, with a smart system being able to add a general diploma if necessary later on. It would then focus on employability skills, career interests, and their course plan. So talking with the types of careers, working with the Department of Workforce Development and the Department of Education, allowing them to choose career clusters. allowing them to say what they're interested in and save and update that. So you may, going in as a an eighth grader or so, have one plan, but you can continuously update that as you learn more and provide with new information. It will allow for the alignment with the employability skills standards, and we could upload or save project and work-based learning items within Scholar Track to make sure that it's accessible to the high school when they transfer. So if you have completed your employability skills standards or your work-based learning projects, you can go ahead and move those from school to school via this. And again, we wouldn't want to embed the exact 4-year course plan into the logic of what we would build, that being that every school calls their course something, your English, your freshman year English may have a different name in each school, but it allows them to upload that, whatever they use, within the Scholar Track system, and they could print that off as well within the plan project. Post-secondary readiness competencies, again, is part of the graduation pathways, and a student can drop down and choose from multiple what they would like to complete when it comes to their post-secondary readiness, whether that's taking the SAT and ACT, looking at a military career by taking the ASVAB, or any of the other items that they are looking to take part in as part of that graduation pathway requirement. And again, we can provide other helpful tools. Again, we don't want this to be a giant form that's unwieldy for students and parents, but we can provide additional checklists of what they need to do to be ready for post-secondary education. It could be a pathway in for more students outside of the 21st Century Scholarship to take advantage of the Scholar Success Program activities that are already available to them. Provide information about the various various campaigns we have throughout the year, whether that's the College Go campaign or how they pay for college, reach out to students about FAFSA initiatives. And again, since it's done at the middle school level, we can link directly the 21st Century Scholarship application and provide parents and students information about their eligibility for the 21st Century Scholarship. Again, it's better. This will allow for a significantly improved recruitment for 21st Century Scholars by having this within our system, by pairing our information with the Department of Education's data. Increased our FAFSA outreach, because we'll be able to see who has not completed the FAFSA once we have all of the students within there, and a more simplified way of having that information. Again, as I've said multiple times, we can connect them with their post-secondary options, and then allow the students to connect them directly with employers via the options that they have. Part of that has to do with, we know we keep talking about this, but as much as our counselors do, oftentimes they may not know exactly what the students are interested in, and this is a pathway for them to know that on an easier basis. To give you an idea of what we would like to do in terms of the project timeline, we would, depending on staffing and workload on how everything goes this fall semester, we would like to start the development and then the testing from November to April. So we would do internal development early on, start testing it with some of our partners, and launch a pilot program in April and May before the schools let out with various pilot schools over the summer, improve on anything that we feel like needs to be improved, with a full launch over the course of the 2021-2022 academic year, with counselor professional development, school professional development, and significant outreach about the benefits of students completing the graduation plan that is required by law, but completing it within Scholar Track itself. So again, some of the stakeholders that we would work with on this are listed here. We would host virtual meetings for reviewing the recommendations, and then include them as we build out the final product and get ready for launch in fall 2021. Some of the items that we may be looking at this upcoming legislative session, this is not set in stone, but 6th grade is often too early for them to select some of this. So we could remove the requirement that it must be completed before the 9th grade. Again, these are just some options that could be considered. Just require the plan before being entered into high school. Right now, it does say within 6th grade they have to complete it. We could ensure and continuous plan update throughout high school. And then I think it's really important that we do ensure that it's readily accessible to parents. and have some way to make sure that they're able to have access to that no matter what format the graduation plan is completed in. So with that, provided quite a bit of information here, and happy to answer any questions. Again, like I said, I wish Courtney could have been here to talk about the work she's done with this, but happy to answer to the best I can.
Josh, this is just a simple one, but I assume that when you finally kick it off, it would be just with a new class of 6th graders, or would you transfer everybody over?
That would likely be the target, but anybody could take advantage of it. It wouldn't be something we would restrict by cohort year. So let's say if we launched it to the 8th graders in 2021, if a counselor at the high school level wanted to do it with their 9th graders and have that information filled out, it's not something we would restrict that way.
The other question kind of related to that is it independently available to students and parents, or does it get initiated by a counselor? I wasn't really clear as to how much change there was there.
Yeah, typically it is the counselors that are doing this, and with anything, it varies from school district to school district how much the graduation plans are used or even completed by the student. So this would simplify the process, again, to make it something that is a useful tool for the students and their families.
Got it. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
A cloud-based application, or I mean, what's the system it's actually being run on?
I only know enough technology to be dangerous. It would be ran through the ScholarTrack system. Colby, if you could help me with that, if you have a way to answer that, but it would be ran through.
Yes. So ScholarTrack isn't a cloud-based application. It is hosted on here at the state of Indiana on state of Indiana servers, but it's our platform that administers all of the other state financial aid programs. So as Josh mentioned, there's certainly quite a few benefits of using this platform, since we've kind of laid out already the infrastructure, and there's so many users of the system already that would really streamline the onboarding of those individuals to the system.
This is John. Is this program, or this was passed by the legislature to encourage more students to go to college, or is it more to provide a lot of the information and help them in their plans to go to college, or is it both?
It would be both, and then I would add it's for the students to know what they need to do to graduate high school and then have a plan for what they are going to do once they are done with high school, whether that is college, military, or directly into the workforce. So it was to outline what they needed to do, the steps they need to take.
Planning ahead, I guess, right? Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Josh? Thank you, Josh. I don't think you were completely a stand-in, because you know a lot of this yourself, but you really gave a very good report. We really appreciate it. So thanks.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
This is Dennis. If I could make a comment, great.
Oh,
great
please, Dennis. Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm wondering, and I know you said you are trying to condense it, but a couple of thoughts. One, I'm wondering if it would be helpful to have some modified timeline, just so that as people are working this, they always have a sense of where they are in relationship to their planning. When I'm doing this, then I also know that this is 6 years away or 4 years away, or even the year. This will happen at 2024, just to have some sense of perspective, and even start build perspective. And then just a thought about some contact information. If you run into a problem, can you call this person? If someone has a question, can you call? So some helpline if somebody has a question as they're working through it. But great design.
Those are both really good suggestions. I like the steps along the way there. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, and Dennis, with the students that you work with, we could use you as a bit of a pilot at the center as we start to develop the prototype, if you're willing to do that with us.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we are about to pilot what we're calling an individual college and career plan, ICCP. And it sounds like some of those, it seems like it links well.
Great, great. Any other comments? Thank you again, Josh. Well done, as usual. Our next item is something we all are familiar with and love, the college completion plan, report. And Sean's going to bring us up to date on that, give us some overview.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bear with me as I try to share my screen. Are you all able to see this?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent.
Yes.
So thank you very much and good afternoon. We're going to be providing an update on the college completion report. This is one of our main annual reports, and it does exactly what you would think it does. It shows the college completion numbers. So this is the cover. All of you all should have received a copy, I believe, digitally. So feel free to leaf through it as we go through the conversation. So first, we're going to go over what is the report and then the so what. So here's the what. The college completion report does three big items. It calculates for both the state and then for each institution how many students complete on time. And then it goes a step further by saying, okay, if not on time, how many complete within 6 years? And then finally, it looks at the long-term trends. So why is this necessary? Well, first, helping students complete on time helps reduce the costs to students. There's a lot of opportunity costs to students in taking longer. There's a lot of additional prices built in to college. And obviously, we want more students to go to college, but we also want to make sure that they complete. It also helps us get a sense for where are the equity gaps and are they closing? And what are the efforts that we can do to help those along the lines of making them a little bit better? And then finally, as we've discussed in numerous other presentations and projects and reports, not least of which are College Value Index and reports, that college completion and having a college degree can have a huge impact on both a graduate's economic well-being as well as the state as a whole. So first, we're going to go over just the data used. The data comes primarily from two sources. They are provided on an annual basis from every public institution in the state. And then this report also uses data from the National Student Clearinghouse, and I'll get into that a little bit later. The focus of this report, as usual, is on students who start as a first-time full-time student, namely that they had not been to college beforehand and that their first semester they're taking a full course load. We do provide some information about part-time students, and we'll cover that in a little bit later. But the main crux of this is those first-time full-time students. And then we're also looking at students who graduated in 2019, so last year. There's always going to be a lag in data. In the completion reports, there's a special lag because we follow them all the way through from when they first set foot on campus all the way through. So if you think about it, when you talk to an astronomer or look at the stars and they tell you, you know, it takes millions of years for all this light to reach us on Earth. It's the same thing a little bit with the completion report numbers. These numbers have been traveling a long time to get to us. So we're kind of looking backwards at time. So when we talk about the on-time rates, for students who were pursuing a bachelor's degree at four-year institutions, those are students who started in fall of 2015 and completed in 2019. For those who started out going for an associate's degree, they started in fall 2017 and graduated in 2019. And then when we look at the extended time rates, 6 years, those are students who started in fall 2013 and once again completed in 2019. quick overview sample. This is IU Northwest. I'm not going to take too much time on highlighting this particular campus, but this is the general layout of our reports. The overall layout may be familiar to you from last year, except it looks, I would say, 10 times better. And that's all thanks to the great efforts of Allison Barty and Alex Parkinson and of course, Doug Littner, who've made it look a lot better. And so on the right side, you can see 3 big donut charts. What we tried to do there is we tried to show, what's the composition of each cohort by race and ethnicity, by economics, and then by age. And then on the left side, we showed the long-term trends of on-time graduation, extended time graduation, and then a sort of leading indicator, which is how many students show up for their second year of college. And then in the bottom left for each institution, we try to break it out by certain demographic groups. This is part of the Commission's commitment to trying to show wherever possible where those equity gaps are. And of course, we will get further into those discussions in our upcoming equity report as well. So what are the key takeaways from this report? And so the bottom line is that completion rates are increasing. One of the fun things about providing these presentations is usually I get to say, things are going up generally. And in this case, it's no exception. This is the extended time rate. So again, over 6 years. And you can see, looking from students who started in fall 2008, about 56% graduated within 6 years. Fast forward to fall 2013, about 62%. That may not sound like a lot, but that's thousands of extra students who are graduating because of those increases. On the right side, you can see that we kind of break it out into 3 different groups. The 4-year main campuses, for lack of a better term, we've grouped them into 4-year main campuses, and those are IU Bloomington, Purdue main campus, ISU, USI, and Ball State. And then the other 4 years are everyone else, and then the 2-year campuses are Ivy Tech and Vincennes. And you can see that there's some differences there. That's both that's caused a lot in some instances by the level of preparation that students come in with. But we also see that generally across the board, college completion rates go up. Because it's such a difficult thing to change, you can see sometimes there's a little bit of a drop from year to year, say from the 2008 cohort to the 2009 cohorts. But generally, if you look 5 years out, you can generally always see an upward trend, and that's what we're really looking for. Now here's on-time completion rate, and again, for 4 years, that's going to be 4 years. For the 2 years, that's going to be 2 years. That's pretty self-explanatory. And again, we've broken it out into the 4-year main, the 4-year non-main, and the 2 years. Once again, the 2-year on-time numbers, they're a little bit more recent because since it only takes 2 years to graduate with an associate's, we're able to look a little less further back. So we're able to capture those 2017 numbers. So once again, we are generally seeing upward increases, and that's what we want to see. And I think that's a lot to do with both the institutions that have made concerted efforts to help their students graduate, along with all of the various pieces that the state has put into place, either at the commission, in the legislature, working with nonprofits, community partners. It takes a state to improve the state, and I think it's fair to say that we're seeing movement across the board. So before we dabble into the institutions themselves, what are the statewide numbers? Well, again, that's 42% graduated on time, and that's the average of the 4 years and 2 year sector. And 62% of students statewide graduated within 6 years. Like I was mentioning earlier, we keep a leading indicator for each of our breakdowns, and that's how many students showed up for their second year of college. And statewide, when you average the 4 and 2 year sectors together, nearly 80% of students come back for a second year of college. Although we want to make sure that students do pursue all the way through, and we know we're losing about 1/5 of them right off the bat. It often comes down to helping make sure that students are making the right choices. And so both the leading indicator and the on-time and extended time rates are things that we're continuing to look at. This leading indicator gives us a little bit of a sense of what we can expect down the road. For four-year institutions, about 48.4% graduated on time. Nearly 70% graduated within 6 years with a bachelor's degree, or were pursuing a bachelor's degree. And here, the leading indicator, about 84% returned for that second year of college. So that leading indicator, again, that's probably going to be the ceiling for the next 2 or 3 years of graduation rates. But every time we can improve that leading indicator, that improves our ceiling for future on-time graduation rates. And if you're wondering how this might compare to other states or the country as a whole, the numbers are a little bit different and not always comparable to the national averages. The U.S. Department of Education does release some graduation rates. Primarily, it's for four-year institutions. The downside is it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, as well as the U.S. Department's numbers tend to be a little bit more stale, as in that they take longer to come out. So we tend to kind of run 1 to 3 years ahead of them in terms of the cycle. But with all of those caveats, our four-year numbers tend to be pretty much in par, maybe a percentage point or two ahead of what the U.S. Department reports for both on-time and extended. While we're talking about those apples-to-apples comparisons, one of the things that we have in our extended is we use National Student Clearinghouse data, and that is to help ascertain transfer students. And so what we want to include in our rates when we publish them at the statewide level is if a student transferred somewhere else and graduated, we want to still recognize that in our numbers. When an institution looks at its own graduation rate, it may only want to look at how many students graduated from that particular institution. But when we take a statewide perspective, what we care about is also, is a student graduating at all? If they're graduating at all and they're staying in the state of Indiana, that's something important to us, regardless of where they graduated. So for our on-time numbers, it's that same campus, same degree, but for our extended time numbers, we do include students who maybe transferred and then graduated. And so that explains a little bit of the difference with the U.S. National rates. And we want to talk about the equity gaps as well. And this is something that we want to make sure that even as we get excited about the successes that our institutions are seeing, we want to recognize that there's still plenty of work to be done. And so here are the statewide on-time numbers for different groups. And so again, about 42% of all students statewide graduate on time, but it differs dramatically based on different demographics. The good news is that in many of these instances, these rates are increasing. The bad news is that because they're not all increasing at the same rate, in some instances, the gaps are actually growing. So it's the sort of rising tide where not all of the boats rise at the same rates. And so this will be something that we touch upon in much greater detail in our equity report, but it's something that we want to make sure that we don't shy away from even in our completion numbers. On a more positive note, when we break out completion rates by socioeconomic status, we see the success of the 21st Century Scholars Program. Once again, I think we say this often, but there's no silver bullet in higher education, but Scholars comes about as close as we can get to a silver bullet. When we look at the on-time completion rates at our community colleges, Scholars are graduating at almost double the rate of their low-income non-scholar peers. And then when we look at the on-time rates at the four-year institutions, scholars are still going far ahead of their low-income peers. And so it's something that we want to keep an eye on and make sure that wherever possible, we help low-income students enroll in the 21st Century Scholars Program when they can, and assist them along the way. And it also ties into, I think, a lot of the ideas that both Josh and others have spoken about today, where if there are opportunities for us to provide resources and additional supports to students, whether they're scholars or not, we will find success in moving those completion rates. We know that through concerted efforts, working with scholars, providing them resources, that those rates have increased. And so there's no reason to think that wouldn't happen by providing similar resources to other students as well. I want to touch upon part-time students. Once again, our completion rate numbers look primarily at students who start full-time, and that's by design, simply because students who are starting full-time are really the only ones who have a shot at graduating on time, as well as they tend to be the ones who are most likely to graduate within that 2 or 4 or 6 year window. Part-time students tend to be a little bit different from the average student in some ways, and those aspects, especially their age, has an impact on their likelihood of graduation. So when we look at part-time students, and just for a rough context, somewhere around 25% of our entire student body is part-time. I want to say about 12% of students at four-year campuses and about 36% of students at our community colleges are part-time, but not all of them start that way. And that creates an additional complication when we try to kind of suss out how part-time students do. A lot of our current part-time students started as full-time students and then dropped down to part-time. But this is just looking at students who start part-time. We know that they are more likely to be low income. They're more likely to be Black. In fact, I think something like 18% of students who start part-time are Black, whereas only about 8% of students who start full-time are Black. And they are much, much more likely to be over the age of 25 when they start. About 40% of students who start part-time are over the age of 25. So they're not that traditional aged population that you think about when you think about students who are starting college for the first time. That probably dictates a lot of the reason why they are starting part-time. They probably have other obligations. They may have, they may be raising children. They may be in the workforce. They've got other obligations. And so that oftentimes dictates both their ability to go to college and the ability to spend as much time in college. And it also comes into play in terms of their likelihood of graduating, because the more things you have on your plates, the more difficult it is to complete college. They're juggling a lot. So we don't provide the on-time rate for them because, again, they were never on pace to complete on time. But we do provide the extended time, and that's 23%. Again, that's lower than the extended time rate for students who start full-time. That leading indicator, fewer than half of students who start part-time come back for a second year. So it's a pretty significant drop-off right off the bat. So we're going to continue to monitor part-time students, but again, they come in oftentimes with different college completion plans and agendas, and they often come in planning to take longer than 6 years, but it's definitely something that we want to monitor and assist them with, and recognize that not all students come in the same. I also want to talk about the impact on the state, and that gets to the so what. So I've given you kind of the what, but what's really the impact here? Well, again, the longer that it takes, the more it'll cost a student. Again, there's opportunity costs there. In talking about those improvements in the extended time rates, just by kind of a quick back of the napkin calculation, we graduated about an extra 4,406 students just by seeing increases in the extended time rate over the last 6 years. I should be cautious with this number. Again, this is assuming that they wouldn't have graduated otherwise. So if you think about it, if the extended time rate had been frozen 5 years ago, we would have lost out on about 4,400 extra graduates. But obviously there's some caveats in there as well, because I'm sure many of them would have still found a way to graduate. And again, college graduates have experience benefits in other ways when they come out with a degree. They have more job opportunities, they get paid more, and especially during the last few months, we've seen studies that show that workers who have college degrees are more likely to work in jobs that can be done remotely, and that's something that we probably never anticipated being a benefit of a college degree, but it has quickly become one in this current recession. And so that's the relative impact on individuals. What is the impact on the state? So based upon our college value report that we've put out, we know that associates earners earn about $250,000 or contribute $250,000 to the economy over their lifetime compared to a high school earner. And that comes from calculations that we did that estimated both the amount of additional consumer spending that they would do, as well as their contributions to the tax base. Bachelor's earners contribute an additional $700,000 above and beyond what a high school earner had. So again, some very back of the napkin calculations. But if you look at that 4,400 additional students that we graduated just by moving the needle on that extended time rate over the last few years, that could be arguably as much as $1.8 billion to the economy, most of which would end up in the pockets of Indiana. Of course, that is only a kind of a rough estimate based upon a number of both assumptions and calculations, but hopefully this gives a sense of the contributions to the economy that college graduates contribute and why it's so important that we improve these college graduation numbers. It's important that we help students graduate on time because it saves them money and it helps get them into the workforce a lot quicker, which contributes to the state's economy. If failing to graduate on time, it's still important that we graduate them at all, hopefully within 6 years for the same reason. We want to get them into the workforce. And those improvements have real implications to the future of the state. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open it up to questions.
This is John. The effort that we put forth to get these students to take 15 hours is paid off. I mean, it's, in 10 years, it's gone up completion rates like 20% on four-year campuses. So that was an effective program, I think.
I think, John, you're right. I think that if we were going to look at one the greatest area of success, it has been improving on-time completion rates. Now, as Sean said, no matter how long it takes to get them to graduate, it's going to be important, but the value of on-time completion, so things like that we've done with financial aid students, the expectation that you would take 15 credit hours at least, there's so many things that we've done focused on this, and it's made a difference.
Yeah.
Sean, I was wondering about the effect of dual credit change in numbers and the effect on the four-year graduation rate. Is there anything that we can say about that?
Yes, absolutely. And so we produced an early college credit report, and we do it on, for a while we were doing it every year. we haven't produced one this year, but I'm sure we will come out with some numbers. Roughly 2/3 of high schoolers graduate with some dual credits, and that number has been increasing over time. And in our latest iteration, what we did was we did what are called some survival analyses, where we basically looked at, based on how many dual credits you have, what's the likelihood that you'll persist and persist and persist and graduate. And not surprisingly, the more dual credit you came in with, the more likely you were to persist and the more likely you were to graduate. And so we know for a fact that that dual credit has had a tremendous impact. I would conjecture to say, I agree that the focus on making sure students go full time with 15 credits is probably the biggest driver, but I have no doubt that dual credit is one of the main ones, if not the number 2 biggest driver.
I just was saying this because of my own point of view. I always talk about dual credit in terms of giving everybody a head start, but not thinking about a head finish too. So I'm glad you made that point.
I guess I'd like to follow up on that if I might. Sean, do you know that it's causal? Do you know that the dual credit is causal for the finishing earlier or on time? Or are the people who have chosen dual credit most likely to go on and complete their college education, as opposed to causing that? I mean, certainly taking the 15 hours is causal.
So that's,
Sean, Ken may want to weigh in on this too with the two of us. We do know that dual credit, even more so than AP, tends to lift people up who have not necessarily been college going or college completers. The demographics. Now, it's a generalization, obviously, Chris, but and I'm going to see if Ken wants to offer something, but I would say improving the completion rates of students who might not have completed that. Yes, there is a relationship. We need to follow what that is, just like we need to follow the number of not only are they, are we actually improving them going to college with college credit, but are some of them graduating early? Are some of them doing double majors because they have that extra time? Those are the kinds of things that we're going to have to follow. But Ken, I don't know if you want to weigh in as well.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Teresa, that when you look at the students who are going to college because of their background, their characteristics, they're going to college typically at lower rates, and they have lower persistence rates and hence lower completion rates. That population, when that population is exposed to and successfully completes dual credit courses, they are more likely to go to college, persist, and ultimately to complete. So it probably has less effect on the students who have characteristics that would suggest that they're going to do pretty well anyway, just like the students who take AP courses are more likely to go to college, persist, and complete. But it's that group of students that that really need that early boost, that exposure to what it takes to succeed in college, that it really makes a difference. And Teresa mentioned earlier when she was talking about the early college, high schools that we have, that's where this effect is particularly demonstrated, because those early college, high schools have a lot of academic and student support services that are available to students. And it really does make a difference for that sort of middle group, if you want, of students who might not otherwise go to college and persist and complete.
I think it's really important that we tease out the really causal factors here, because there are a lot of things that are, parallel or they end up in the data, but they're not causal. They're not causing somebody to do something. And even if you're taking the dual credit, or why are you taking the dual credit, and what is it that makes it causal? Is it that you're told you can do a college course? Is it because you're taken to some college campus? I mean, what are the elements that really make it causal?
Right. Well, I think that's one thing we can certainly dig into as we get around to working with Sean's team on the next report in this area. But I think the first thing that you mentioned, this exposure to college and what it takes, the fact that you can do college work is an important confidence builder. And I think that really is causal.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, just building kind of off of those points, and from what I've seen, since I was able to take a lot of college credits as a high school student, it was really beneficial once I started school. And that's what's allowed me to do another major and an additional minor all within 4 years too, and being heavily involved. So I think, there's a lot of research that can be done there too. As I expressed to some of the commission members earlier, is that there's a great time when I have been able to do a semester where I did an internship and took 12 credit hours versus the 15, but I was able to do that because of having those college credits. So really having those, college credits or the AP classes is allowing students to maybe take those 12 credit hours and still have work time too. So that's a really good point. I think, it's giving students the time to work and get real world experience while also, completing their courses and staying a full-time student.
That's extremely helpful, and it's one of the things that we run into a lot. Getting back to Chris's question of what's the causality there, and part of it is that in almost every educational program we have what's known as a self-selection bias, and I know Chris knows all about this in terms of just how do we suss out why a student ended up where they were. One thing that we can say is that in our early college credit report, what we did do is we tried to control for everything that we could, right? So we controlled for minority status, we controlled for your high school diploma, did you get an honors, a core 40? We controlled for your socioeconomic status, we controlled for how many dual credits you got. And after controlling for all of that, we still found that having dual credit was linked with graduating on time. And the more dual credit you have, the more you'll graduate on time. Again, it's tough to suss out what drove those students to get dual credit in the first place. I imagine, and the same reasons why you earned dual credit are similar to the reasons why you're here with us today, which is that you are a very good student, and how much has dual credit played into your success, and how much would you have succeeded simply because you were a good student? But those are always the sticky questions we actually really enjoy digging into. So I think we'll really enjoy getting into this one.
Well, I think what Annie said, though, was what's so interesting in that it's building on what you said, Sean. Yes, she's a good student, and yes, she would have graduated, but she wouldn't have had the opportunity to do some of those other things that have guided her in her career choices that she's making. She wouldn't have been able to take those internships that she took, or she wouldn't have been able to get a double major. So those are other things that I think we're going to have to continue to measure as we do this. And
Teresa, excuse me, I don't have any question about the benefits of dual credit for any college student who gets there and wants to take a second degree or a second major or any of that. What I'm really looking for, and I think what's really important to be teased out here, is the causality of the dual credit for the underrepresented, for those who are at risk, and what really moves them. I have no doubt that somebody who's a good student are going to take classes and the benefit of dual courses and all that for them. It's really about what causes people who are not otherwise likely to go to college to start thinking about it and getting there. And I know we've got the 21st Century program, we've got a whole set of programs, but every time we can tease out what causes a child to do that and makes it a different path for them, we need to be expanding that and using that. That's all.
And Chris,
you're right. I agree totally.
Right. I was going to, yeah, but totally I agree as well. I was going to suggest too that the next time we get around to talking about the data, We also supplement that with some firsthand narratives from counselors, from students themselves, who can tell their story and might provide some firsthand personal insights into how it has made a difference.
You know, we started down this path of doing surveys on the graduating students this year to figure out the impact of COVID. You know, maybe this whole idea of doing more with surveying students about, you know, what made you, you know, questions like you're asking, you know, what things in your high school experience made you convinced you were going to go to college and you could succeed or whatever. You know, we could do some of those, which I think can speak to your narratives, but could be even more inclusive than just a story or two. It could actually reach a higher number of people that we could have more confidence in those numbers being something other than just anecdotes.
Right.
And building kind of off of that, I think it'd be really interesting if that survey goes out to say, did you take this because your peer took it? I think that's the biggest thing that I saw in high school was the more of my peers that were taking college credit, the more that I was willing to, because I was kind of on that first round of it that really there was a lot of people taking them. And so when I was going through, the more peers that I had that were taking them, the more that it was presented by the teachers in the classroom, the more I felt like I should be doing it because I wanted to be similar to my peers and on that same level. So I'm wondering if that could be one of the good, you know, selections is, you know, was it a peer that motivated you or was it the teacher?
Yep.
Great conversation. Any other comments or questions? It's really good to be reminded of how valuable it is to have a student sitting here with us. Thank you, Ann. And thank you, Sean. Excellent report, as always. More to come, I know, but it's good news. Good news.
Thank you.
Now, Alex, I'm sorry. Do you have a comment?
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm thinking maybe not such good news with Alexa. That's not really fair, but we do have to talk about the spending plan for the fiscal year. And Alexa's going to walk us through what we have, and then we will take a vote. Difficult year and some changes I know that have to be made, but Alexa's in good hands.
Thank you.
My computer setup is a little bit odd, but okay. I'm trying to share my screen. So, sorry. Okay. So as I mentioned in the committee report outs, we are going to be discussing and talking through the detail of our fiscal year 21 internal spending plan today. So to give a little bit of a background, every year at the close of quarter 3, which is March 31st, we start the preparation of our spending plan. And as you're all aware, COVID-19 hit around that exact same time. And at that time, we had no idea how much of an impact COVID-19 would have on our next fiscal year's budget. So in May, the state budget agency typically sends out a memo to state agencies notifying them of the reserve target. And the reserve target is the percentage of agencies' funds that they need to hold back to send back to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. And the past few years, just for reference, the reserve target has been around 2 or 3%. And in late May, we learned that it was 15%. So this was obviously a bigger change than we expected. And then at the end of June 30th, the state budget agency notified us that we would have an exemption on some of our funds that have been previously exempted every year prior. And those include our financial aid funds and then funds that are 100% pass through. So due to the 15% reserve target, we had to kind of go back again with each of our departments and have bigger conversations with them to try to determine, you know, some more ways of saving in order to get us to the 15% reserves. So after much work and time, we have finally finalized our fiscal year 21 spending plan. And what we're going to walk you through today is the detail of it and a couple of new funds that have been added since last year. And then we also have a comparison sheet that we will show you, which will show what we budgeted for fiscal year 20 compared to what we're budgeting for fiscal year 21. So I'm sure this is very small on your screen, so I'll try to zoom in a little bit. So I'm just going to point out our funds high level at first. And as you can see, the spending plan is in the same format as it has been for many years, with the breakdown of our funds and then our appropriation and revenue and then our expenditures. And then at the very right, our reversions. And then, so at the very left, we have our funds, and they're broken out into sections. So we have admin, outreach, student financial aid, private grants, and then federal grants. Two funds that I just want to point out quickly are, one is in our administration fund, and it's for our CHEDS software upgrade. I'm sure many of you are aware of that, but so this is to fund or to pay for our new CHEDS system. And then the other fund I wanted to point out is our CARES Act funding that was mentioned previously today. This is the fund from the U.S. Department of Education, and it is for our Rapid Recovery Initiative. That funding is in the total amount of $9 million, and it's broken out into, so $2 million is for external services, and then the other $7 million is for Workforce Ready Grant, and that's for credit bearing and as well as non-credit bearing at institutions. So that's just a little detail of the high level and the background. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine to talk through more of the detail.
All right, so first I want to draw your attention to the column that is labeled total funds available. The figures here represent what we enter fiscal year 21 pretty much in our bank account with our various funds. The total funds available is comprised of that we might have in certain funds, the FY21 appropriation, any receivables or revenue that we are anticipating we will receive, and it does take into account our reserve set by SBA that we are holding in that particular fund. So you'll be able to see that there. And then just to give you guys a quick reminder, the carryover represents any funding that we have in a fund. Let's say if we have FY21 appropriation, some funds allow, we're allowed to spend the funding in the next year or a future year if we do not deplete all those funds in the year that it was appropriated. So you'll see that most of that funding, the carryover piece, comes from financial aid, which a good chunk of our financial aid funds, we are allowed to spend down that funding in future years. All right. So, and then I'll go over receivables quickly. Here, we are anticipating roughly around $65,000 in our board preparatory education fund, just $1,000 in the career college student insurance fund, and then $50,000 in Learn More Indiana. And these are estimates that are on par with what we've seen in previous years. So that's what we are anticipating or hoping to receive this fiscal year. And then once we get down to student financial aid, it's kind of different. So here you'll see that 1.5 million is listed for the Children and Disabled Veterans and Public Officers Fund, that's CBO. That represents a transfer into that fund that we will likely have to do from a DOT student grant to backfill a shortage in that fund. We've had to do that the past couple of years. So we anticipate that we'll have to do that again this year. And then, of course, we have a negative amount here represented, negative 1.5 in a DOT student. You'll also notice that there's a 1.36 million listed here for the Mitch Daniels Early Graduation Scholarship. That scholarship is actually not appropriated directly under our agency. It comes from tuition support, which is appropriated under the Department of Education and is then transferred to us at the beginning of the fiscal year. And then here for the Workforce Ready Grant, we share this fund and program with the Department of Workforce Development and Code. So the past several years, we've sent them a portion of this funding so they can have funding available for their piece. This year, we are sending them $3 million of a $4 million appropriation, and that is on par with what we did last year as well.
Jasmine, just a minute, just so to remind you, in case you wonder why we send so much, it's because for the credit-bearing part, which that we pay for with Workforce Ready Grant, we cover those costs with Pell dollars. So that is, and the non-credit part, you can't use the Pell dollars for. So that's why that money goes to pay for the non-credit through Department of Workforce Development. But we pay for the non-credit at Ivy Tech or Vincennes. We do have to have some money to pay for that.
All right, so, and then just to touch briefly on the reversion amounts, as Alexa mentioned, of course, this fiscal year in preparation for this spending plan was a bit different with COVID and the fiscal situation surrounding that. But we did work very closely with all of the departments to look over their spending plans and to figure out areas that we can cut while still maintaining mission critical activities and functions. So the things that we had to reduce to get to the final number included some marketing items. We worked very closely with the communications team to look over and reduce some of those items. We also moved around some personnel expenses, and by code and by law, we were able to pay for employees who work in student financial aid out of some of our financial aid funds. So we utilized that, and it just because it makes all the sense, and it was able to free up some of the funding in our general funding. And we also renegotiated several bigger contracts to get a more favorable and lower cost on those. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah. So we'll move on to tab 2 then, which is going to show the comparison between our FY20 budgeted expenses and our FY21 budgeted expenses. All right, so, and I'll just go through these quickly. Some of the changes that you will see starting at the top in our administration funds. There's a slight increase in the spending there because we are anticipating to spend more in the Graduate Medical Education Board program, and we had some additional, we had a slight increase in the amount that from previous years with our STEM program as well. And then if you go down to outreach, we have a slight increase simply because we are going to be able to spend down some donations funding that we've received and also tap into some carry forward from the 21st administration fund. And then in the student financial aid fund, these are based on some projections that we worked with Kobe to put together. And if you guys want greater detail on that, I will let him speak to that directly. So essentially, we have assumed that we will spend either the same or a little bit more in most of our student financial aid funds. Of course, we're still looking to see how all that would shake out. And then you'll see private grants. With COVID happening, we had some things that we had to kind of change last minute, but the different departments are working with the grantors of those, and redirecting some of that funding. And of course, we're seeking any external funding that we can get to help supplement some of the reduction in our state funding as well. And then lastly, our federal funding, we are anticipating a bigger increase in spending in FY21 due to the CARES Act funding that we received for the Rapid Recovery Initiative. And because we were informed that with our Gear Up program, we will be able to spend down some of the carry forward. All right, so if there are no questions, I will turn it back over to Alexa.
So it would seem, this is Mike, so it would seem that really the biggest savings or cut is going to be in personnel. Have we made those decisions and changes? And I mean, kind of where are we in that whole process of getting those dollars and accepting the reversion levels?
There wasn't any cutback.
Yeah, we were just able to allocate some of our payroll expenses to our financial aid funds for those individuals who directly work on the financial aid funds, like our financial aid support team, for example. So those are technically the cuts, but there weren't technically really any personnel cuts that we made.
It was really, Mike, we were just paying for them out of a different fund.
Gotcha. Well, good. Well,
A higher
good.
percentage of them out of those funds, out of those funds.
No layoff.
Good.
Does anybody else have any more questions?
Yeah, I think you did a good job with 15% is a pretty big hit. And the fact that we kept all of the financial aid is, that's big. So yeah, we came up, I think, quite well based on, and I'm sure you did a lot of work to get that to happen.
Yes, it's been months of work, so.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine, I mean, the biggest part of our budget is financial aid in terms of just the actual numbers. And if it had been 15% out of the financial aid, it would have meant that the size of the grants to individuals in the Franco-Bannon would gone down dramatically. So I think there was full recognition of the fact that this was not the time to make those kinds of cuts in financial aid.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I'll move approval of the budget. It's Chris Murphy.
Thanks, Chris. Is there a second?
John.
John.
I will second.
John, second. Okay. Any other questions or comments? We are.
This is Dennis. I just want to say I think it's worth repeating. You can't talk about those types of reductions without talking about a tremendous amount of work that's gone into it. So again, though it has been stated, I think it's worth repeating. Just all the work, all the effort, all the hours, all the collaborations, all the deliberations, all the back and forth. It just had to have happened. So it's just I think it's worth just pondering that for a minute and saying, really, everybody, thank you. Because you know how much you're challenged in this kind of environment on every level, more than we can possibly see or understand. So Alexa, wonderful. Jasmine, outstanding. And Teresa and team, great job.
Yeah, well, if I could just, as a member of the committee, if I could add to that, both Alexa and Jasmine did a good job of outlining it to us, describing it, discussing it, and getting us pretty comfortable with the decisions that were made. And I know Teresa was behind that all the way, so well done.
Yeah.
Well, I want to add, I mean, you know, Alexa and Jasmine have just had to step up in so many ways that no one thought they would have to. In addition to all the work they've done with finance, Alexa now has to spend, the amount of time we're spending on HR issues right now is not like anything we've ever seen in the time that I've been here, or probably ever since the commission began. So they both walked into these jobs at a time when, you know, the jobs changed. And so they've had to learn on the spot, and they've done an extraordinary job. Very well done. And thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Chris, for saying that.
You're welcome.
Agreed. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion passes. And I want to add my thanks to Alexa and Jasmine as well. I feel better about things right now. Hope that it stays that way for us. Okay, we are down to the academic degree programs at this point. There are 5 of them, as Ken said earlier, that are up for expedited action. They're listed in the agenda book beginning on page 15. And I'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Judd.
A second?
Mike Kelly, I'll second.
Did we get who that was?
I think Trent did.
Give it to Mike.
Chris. Okay.
Give it to Trent. Yeah.
We got it.
He's the academician.
Okay, we give it to Trent. We do. Any other questions for Ken or any information you'd like to add? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Same. They are approved. We are at the point just a little after 3, which is kind of amazing. We have academic degree programs awaiting action and academic degree programs actions taken by the staff and some media coverage beginning on page 19 of your book. I do want to check to see if we have any old business or any new business.
Madam Chairman, this is Dan Peterson. I joined.
Yes, Dan.
Apologize for having to drop off. I may have missed this somewhere, but I'd like to propose in the new business section that we get John Pop a new coffee cup.
Uh-oh.
Can you hold up your coffee cup, John?
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Better cover it up, John.
It's okay. Okay, I'm just saying.
I'll get my IU one out the next
All right.
time. I'm sorry.
Any of the Indiana schools would be fine.
Yeah.
Even a Notre Dame one?
Yeah. Notre Dame.
Absolutely.
There are a few of us rebels, I guess. I'm sorry about that.
Well, in conclusion, or we could banter for a long time. That might be a good idea, thinking about that. But I certainly want to, again, welcome Pepper and Ann. Hope you enjoyed the meeting. We look forward to many, many more. Congrats to Dan and Dennis. Special thanks to Liz, who's been working on the whole virtual meeting business, and that's not an easy thing. So thank you, Liz, for all that hard work. And then thank you to Teresa, the leadership group, and the entire staff for all that they've been doing during just keeping business going, but now through all that we've been through, really keeping CHE not only right on top of things, but moving forward in such a progressive way. We are proud to be a part of that team. Our next meeting, September the 10th, we'll be back together on, I started to say Zoom, but it's not Zoom. But we will be all back together virtually, and we'll see everybody then. We are adjourned.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Go Blue.
Great job,
Stay
Bev.
safe.
Great job, Bev.
Thanks.